Okay, good to go.
Okay. Hello and welcome. It's the 23rd of May, 2020. It's a Saturday here at Code Mentoring, a beautiful day here in Toronto. Today we're going to be building a React component. It's going to be the autocomplete. This is something that we came up with as an idea last week. So I think you guys are all pretty familiar with the idea of an autocomplete. Just as an example, right, if you head over to Google, right, you start typing something like, what is, right? I can navigate this with my arrows, so I'm not using my mouse here. Right? And I can click on something. What is 5G? Right, and just press enter, and it's selected something. Right, so it's fulfilled. This is what we're going to be building today, not Google, but this little component you see here. Right, we're choosing React for this. So this is going to be the topic of probably today and also next week as a two-part series, which I'm really excited about. So before we jump in, does anybody have any questions around, what this is, why we're building it? Any questions regarding the technology with React? So I'm going to open up my code editor. Personally, I like to use VS Code. I'm going to start with a fresh VS Code instance. There's no folder currently, so I'm going to go ahead and create. Create a new folder, call this autocomplete. All right. So for this to work, I think we're going to have this here is talking to the Google API. All right. So if I search this is actually doing some kind of lookup. In fact, if we look in the network inspector, we can probably see every time we type something, right, it's actually doing a request. So this is talking to the Google's API, coming back with a response, presumably a bunch of JSON in here, right? So we need something to talk to for our autocomplete. Now, in our case, I think we're going to use something like random user API. So if we go down to, I think it might be randomuser.me. Randomuser.me. Yeah, so these guys have an API, right, which just generates pretend people. For example, if I refresh this page, right, all this data here generates things like emails, birthdays, whatnot. So we're gonna use this as the API. So if we head into our documentation for this, right, I think there's a option of generating quite a few people all at once. So what we're going to do is we're going to essentially the first step of what we're going to focus on is a little Express API that we can query, right? That essentially allows us to search for individual users. So that's going to be the first step. The second step is the React API. The React component that allows us to type something in and search the API that we built. So the first thing I'm going to do is go ahead, and I'm actually going to set up a little npm project and git project. So first I'll do git, so git init, just so we're tracking everything. I'll zoom in a bit so you guys can see. Right. Second thing is yarn init. I'm going to do -y for yes, just to skip through all the questions. All right. Let's see here, that's created a little project. Now, the first dependency I'm going to install is Express. Yarn add Express. So for those who know NPM, it's created this little dependency here. Also, there's node modules, which of course, we have to go ahead and add that to our git ignore. Now, I'll be posting all of this stuff on GitHub for you guys. So if I'm skipping over things too quickly, don't worry. Intermittently, I'll post it up on GitHub so you guys can copy the code. Great. So I'm just going to create a little API folder here. I think let's stick to JavaScript today. Let's not worry about TypeScript. Call it server.js. All right. So const app equals require express. So this is how we start an Express API, right? Or a little Express web server. If you're used to, say, something like Apache, this is a very different format for setting up an API or a web service. Your Apache is typically done through some kind of config file and the various CLIs and services that you run. Whereas Node.js and Express, you start your service through code. So everything is managed. So for those who are familiar, this will be pretty easy. Now, to listen for this and actually get this running, I'm going to go app.listen. Oh, sorry, it's Express. Const app equals Express. We call that. And we go app.listen. And we're going to use, say, 8080 for this one. We'll just log something out. API is listening on HTTP localhost 8080, like that. So if I go into my terminal and I go node API/server.js, this will actually spin up localhost. So we're now running. All right, we're cooking with gas, which is good. So the next step, right, is to create this query so that we can actually search this API endpoint. Okay. But before we do that, have we got any questions on setting up the project, so running this Express server, anything we've covered so far? You guys following along?
How can you run the yarn init? Because I tried to run the yarn init, it's just cause a error.
So you might not have yarn installed. In that case, if you run npm init, so you run npm init, that will do the same thing. And then instead of yarn add, you can go npm I or install, right? Express-save, like this. They'll do the same thing. I personally like yarn. I feel the developer experience is a little bit nicer than npm, but if you like to use npm, that's fine too. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it's okay. Thank you.
Awesome. Excellent. Any other questions before we jump in to building out a little endpoint? Alrighty, let's do it.
It is a question on the chat from Sandy.
Yep.
What did you run after yarn init?
Let's have a look. So I ran yarn add express. So what that does is it adds this dependency. So we can, essentially what we're doing, imagine this as borrowing a book from a library, right? So you go to the library and the library has all these different books and you want some knowledge from the library, right? But you have to know where that knowledge lives. For example, maybe we're looking up the ecological behavior system of baboons in Northern Africa. I don't know, right? So you have to go and know which book that belongs to. That's kind of what a library is, right? When you, an npm or yarn, the same kind of thing. is essentially your library tool, your management. So when you say yarn add express, what you're saying is, can I borrow this book, right? Or copy this book? And you download that book, and it actually gets stored in node modules. Right now, sometimes books have other dependencies. The books need other books to reference them. That's what all these things in here are. All right, this is your library, node modules. Now, your package JSON is kind of like your library card. It tells you all the books that you're currently borrowing that are needed to run what you're building. Does that make sense? I haven't used that metaphor before, but I feel like that's a pretty good explanation of it, actually.
Yeah, it's pretty good. I'm trying to take a note of that so I can remember.
Yeah, well, good thing it's recorded. So yeah, I'd say npm is kind of like the library. Yarn add or npm install, they're the same thing. What that does is checks out that book, right? Adds it to your library. So if we scroll down here, we'll see express, right? So now this book has been added to your library. Now, here's the cool thing, is the reason why we don't commit node modules to Git is because all this stuff, all the library books that are needed, so when somebody else wants to run your story or your project, right, here's a list of all the stories or all the books that they need to build it, to make sure it works. All the references. So you don't need to commit node modules to Git, because this can get quite large. Right, all the references to all the other books or all the other packages, as a technical term, this can get very, very large. In fact, there's jokes about this. There's jokes saying, you know, that it downloads half the internet and whatnot, because typically JavaScript developers don't have a lot of consideration to the dependencies that they install. They just go willy-nilly, they just add all these different things, and this node modules can get quite bloated. So definitely do not commit that into Git. Any other questions before we continue? So we did the Git init, yarn add express, right? And then I ran the node API /server.js. So just running this file. Okay. So the next thing is, let's actually get some data. Now, in our case, all right, this random user.me, I think I want to try and find a way to get lots of them all at once. So it has a lot of really cool features. So you can specify, here we go, results. That's what we want. So you can specify things like gender, right, password. There's all sorts of options here. So I recommend you guys go and read through this. But this is what I was looking for, the results. So we want to have a big list of users that we can start to query, right? So I'm going to go ahead and copy and paste this. And why don't we say, when we first start up this app, right, we query down, maybe not 5,000 users, that's quite a lot. Let's say 1,000, right? So to do this, I'm going to install a library called Axios. So again, I'm going to go, this is another story or another library book that we need to reference. All right, so I'm going to go yarn add Axios, A-X-I-O-S. And that's going to allow us to use this story inside our story. All right, so express, I'm also going to have Axios. So we just installed that now. Okay, so before the app starts up, right, we're going to pull down all those users. So we're going to go const users equals Axios, and then we simply just pass that in like that. Now we don't want 5,000. Why don't we say 1,000? Now for now, right, let's just log. Let's just see what we get back from this. We'll just do a console.log users. See what we get. So again, I'm going to restart the server. In fact, we're going to create a little script for it, just so we don't have to keep writing out that each time. I'm going to come into my package JSON. I'm going to create a shortcut for myself, right, called scripts. Now, scripts allows you to alias commands, right? It's like a nickname for a friend. So in our case, it's going to be start to start the API. I'm going to copy that command that we had before, which was node. We're going to run the node API/server.js. That's just going to be an alias nickname for running this server file. Any questions on scripts, how that works? Excellent.
It's pretty straightforward.
Yep.
Thank you. Yeah.
Cool. So now I can run yarn start, or if you're running npm, you can do npm run start. Right. So I personally like yarn. It's a bit nicer. Yarn start, and then there we go. So we've got this thing. Promise pending. What does that mean? It's promised me something. Sounds like a wedding vow. I promise I'll give you something. And how do we actually get it?
Hey, just a quick one, Tristan. Are you able to increase the font a little bit?
Yes. Does that help?
Yeah, it looks good to me.
Sure.
Yeah,
There you go.
all good. Thanks, Tristan.
No worries. So what do we have to do with this team? Right? Who knows about promises?
You need like an await. So
And await. All right, let's try that. So where do I put that?
well, in front of Axios, but
Yep.
you also don't you need to suspend some?
Well, let's try it.
anyway,
Let's try it. All right. Uh-oh. So we've got this
in
problem,
Async,
right?
not just suspend.
Yeah. So what we need to do here is we need to wrap this block of code inside an async, right? An async function. So let's go ahead and do that. All right. So let's say function start. We'll grab all this stuff, we'll put it in here, and we'll make this function async. Async function start. This. So now we can do this awaiting. And then, of course, we need to call that down the bottom. Make sure you call it, otherwise your server won't run. I will just ask, if you're not currently talking, please put yourself on mute. Just a little bit of a background noise going on. Thanks. Okay, cool. So look what we've got, team. We've got some stuff that's come through. All right, data. We've got a whole bunch of other things. All this random information. We don't need any of this. Right, the only thing we need is the data. So let's go ahead. I'm going to use a concept called destructuring. All right, so this is now going to be data. So it's actually going to pull that out of that. And then we still want it to be called users. So when you're destructuring, you can do the colon users. So it renames it. It's just a shorthand way of saying this. Let's say this is the result. All right, and then going const users equals results dot data, like that. Instead of doing these two lines, right, I just do like this. So it does the exact same thing. So if you guys are cool with this, I'm just going to do this the shorthand way. All right. So now we have a array of 1,000 users that we've put in. Right? We've got emails, we've got name. All right, let's have a look at a name. What does it look like? Let's have a look at an individual user.
Tristan?
Yeah.
Will you explain destructuring again? Like my screen just broke down a little bit and couldn't understand how you did data users.
Sure. So this here, right, is the same thing as the data users. So we get the result. The result has a data property, right? Result.data, and then the data has the users, like this. So that's essentially doing the same thing.
Cool. Thank you.
No worries. So I think it might be, we've got an info. Is it a, let's have a look here. I think it might be a results. Let's just have a look. Yeah, results. So we need data. I'm actually going to do another nested one. All right, results. So that's actually doing the same concept, just going one level deeper, which is really cool. You can actually go as deep as you want with this. It's very powerful. That's destructuring.
Sorry, what's the benefit of that?
It's just a bit shorter. So,
I mean, to do the nested one. I know we abbreviated it, so to speak, for the first one, but then what's the purpose of doing it again?
yeah, so you might let's say you have like an object called const a equals right foo long, right. Now let's say this is coming back some place, right? And you want to get these details. So let's say const foo and bar equals a. Sorry, foo and lorem. Right? So you got this like that. That works. But let's say you don't want to use it as this. You want to call this, say, the name. So you rename this. Right? And let's say we want to rename this to say the content. Right? Let's say we have like a more complicated one. So it's like let's rename this to say like 1, call this age. And let's say we have thing, right? And this might be first is Bob, last Bobby Brown, right? Now in here, this is just an example of destructuring, right? What I can do is I can go thing. Now let's say I don't actually want to use thing. All I want is the first and last name, last properties as first and last name, right? So I can come in here and go first, call it first name, right? Last is last name, right? So now we've renamed all these properties as age, content, first name, and last name. These are now properties that we can, like variables that we can use, right? Log, right? Hello, my name is first name, last name, right? I am age, years old. That's totally valid. So all we're doing is allowing like a deep rewrite of this. And you can do the same thing with arrays as well. It's just a powerful way of extracting content.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
So Tristan, in the console.log, instead of age, if you just do I am 4 years old, did it gonna print the age as well or no?
No. So foo does not exist as a variable. It doesn't get assigned. If I did this,
Then it will.
then it will.
Okay.
But the colon in this syntax actually renames it,
Okay.
which is pretty cool. Very powerful.
Yeah.
So that's a little lesson on destructuring. In fact, I'm going to post this in the JavaScript Advanced in Slack, just so you guys can see this. I have reference for it. So if you head into Code Mentoring channel, or workspace rather, and you head down to the, where are we? Advanced, JavaScript Advanced. I'm going to paste this code snippet in here for you. Destructuring. Thanks, Shane. Cool. Okay, so any other questions before we move ahead? Anything we've covered so far? Cool. So we've got these users, right? That's working really well. So if we have a look down here, right, we're seeing all these users. So let's inspect an individual user, see what properties we're getting back. All right. Now, for those who are here for the GraphQL talk, right, you can see why this is very wasteful. We haven't actually requested any of these details. So for those who are, and we're requesting 1,000 users at once. So there's a lot of information here that doesn't need to be here. So if you haven't watched our GraphQL tutorial, definitely look at that on YouTube because it's some pretty cool stuff. Anyway, so you can see here we've got a name, right, first and last. So this is what we're going to be querying through our API. Okay. All right. So why don't we go ahead and create a little API endpoint that we can start to query. So who knows how to do that inside Express? What do we use? I already gave you the hint. What do we use? Right. There's app.use. Right. Or we can do app. Yeah, we'll use use. Right. Now, in this case, we probably want to have it under a URL. So we can create a router for this. So we're going to go const router equals app dot router, or actually express dot router. This. We go router dot. This is where we have all of our HTTP verbs, right? We have get, post, update, put, delete, all that stuff. In our case, we're just going to use a get. Right? Now the path name is where we want to listen to on this. So in our case, let's just say search. Right? Because we want to search the API. Then we take a handler which has the request, the response, and the next. So imagine I've already explained this in a few other videos, so definitely go and have a look at some of these. But this is just to recap. This is a pipe, right? Imagine a big long pipeline. These are sections of the pipe, right? We have the request, so there's something that's coming in. The response is something that's coming back out, and the next is the next section of that pipeline. So definitely have a look on our YouTube if you guys want to more into that. I'm not going to do too much about Express today. Just going to keep it pretty simple. So in our case, right, because we're using a get, right, that means that we're going to have to use the query string for the search, what we're actually typing in to the autocomplete. So we can get that quite easily. Does anybody know how to get the query string inside Express, an Express handler? For those who have been doing Express for a while, anybody know?
Hojung says rec.param.
Oh, good guess. Not param. So param refers to, say we had here, right? And then we had, say, like the ID, right? That this is a parameter. So when I typed into my browser, right? HTTP localhost, right? Localhost / search / 123, right? ID would be equal to 123. So if I went to request.params, right, .id, ID equals 123. So it's not params. Params is the actual, but you're close. You're very close. It's the same idea. It's not params. It's actually query. So query is what we want on this. Okay, so I'm going to use the same concept that we used here with the destructuring. Const, let's just call it Q, the query. Right. Now let's just throw an error. We'll say if there's no Q, right, next I'm going to pass in an error. So new error, right, no Q, no query found. Right. Turn this. So let's try this, right? And then of course we need to use that. So about this. So let's actually try this. Restart my server. All right, listing on port 8080. Close these down. Localhost search. Now this should hopefully throw us an error. There you go. No query found. Perfect. That's exactly what we expect. So what do we do next, team? What's the next step? Before, is there any questions on anything we just did with this? On setting up a basic endpoint. So just to recap everything we're doing, we're using Express and Axios. Axios is our way of fetching this data. It's the same thing as going into your address bar and actually loading up this URL. It's just grabbing all this data for us. So that's what Axios does. We needed the async await, right, because it returns a promise. We learned about destructuring. Right, we started running the server on the port 8080. Now we're getting into routers, right? So we're actually getting a specific URL on our API. We learned about the query, not params, but query string. Different thing. And now we're throwing an error. So who's following along? Who's actually getting up to this state so far?
Hi, Christian. I was following along, but I couldn't get before the router. It just gave me an error as well. So.
Okay. What's the error that you're getting back?
Let me just look. Throwing inside of async function without a catch block or rejecting a promise.
Oh, okay. It sounds like your Axios might be failing, which I'm not quite sure why that would be happening. What I'll do is I'll post up this exact code onto Slack. So if this code doesn't work for you, right, I'd say it's a different problem. I'm not quite sure exactly what that would be.
Yeah, you can also post the error messages that you're getting.
Yeah.
On the channel. If anybody's having any problems, just you can post the whatever error messages you're getting, just post it onto the channel, and we can take a look.
Maybe the URL there.
Yeah, there's a question then from Hojon. So you see the way, so you're using express.router to get the router constant, and then you're using app.use. Hojon says he usually uses app.get. Is there a difference? Do you know?
It's the same. It's the same thing. App.get, I think. No, sorry. I think app.get is actually getting a variable.
Oh, it's taking a string.
Yeah. So this is not the same thing. So I'm pretty sure app.get is, you can do like app.set. So app.set sets a variable. You can see here setting, and then the value. So you can set, like, say, some custom variable, right? Custom var to something, right? And then app.get allows you to get that custom var, and that will return something. So they're not the same thing. if that makes sense. Any other questions on anything we've covered so far?
Frank just wants to see the package.json for a sec.
Yep.
You can probably post that into the channel if anyone wants to.
Package JSON? Yeah, sure. In fact, what I might do is just commit this to Git. So yeah, commit. Oops. It's fine. And then go into GitHub, code mentoring. Create a new repository, webinar, autocomplete, right, Express, JS plus React, autocomplete, component. Make it public for you guys. Excellent. For those who are part of our Git tutorial on Thursday, right? Git remote add origin and then git push. There we go. So that should be living on GitHub for you guys. Right there. Let's post a link to this. Excuse me. Okay. There you go. So you guys can clone that down. Great. Any other questions before we jump into the next part of our API? Sherry says, will you be posting the Git tutorial? That is on YouTube, I believe. So if you go to our YouTube channel, that should be there. If it's not, I'll upload it. Cool. All right, team. Well, why don't we do the next part, and then we'll go for a short break. So what is the next part? What do you guys think the next part is? Well, we actually have to query something. We have to return something back, don't we? So currently, all right, let's just return a list of pretend. All right, so foobar. Let's just see if this works. All right, I restart my server. Yarn start. Excuse me. Come over here. We refresh. We get this error saying no query found. We fix this by going question mark. So this is now in the query, and we set our query to just Q, right? So we say Q equals, let's just say 1, 2, 3. Search question mark Q equals 1, 2, 3. Okay, we have a problem, team. What is it? You can see the spinning wheel going on here. What is going on? Anybody tell me?
There's no res, the response.
There's no res. So what do I need to do?
Res send.
Send. In fact, in this case, we're going to use JSON, res.json. It does the same thing, it just formats it as JSON. So instead of returning, right, we're going to do this instead. This tells Express, hey, we want to give something back. All right, so let's try this. Refresh the page, and there we go. All right, we're getting back some details, which is good. So what we have to do is we now have to filter the users based on the query that we're sending. don't we? So in our case, why don't we, I'm not going to get into searching and searching algorithms because that is a very complicated subject that we don't really have time for today. So what I'm going to do is a quick filter, a match against the combination of the user's first and last name. So what I'm going to do is, let's get the results. Now, who knows how to do this? What should I use? What array function should I use on this?
Filter.
That's exactly right. So filtered, or say searched, equals users dot filter. Now, what does filter do? What do I have to do with filter?
Basically specify a function that will have the filtering logic.
And what does it return, this function?
A new array based on
no,
condition.
No, it does not. Oh, sorry, the filter itself does. But what do I return inside the function itself?
Whatever search results you're getting based on the query.
What I return is a boolean. I return a boolean. And what this does is it loops over every single item inside the array and says, should it belong inside the new array? If I return true, that item gets added in. If I return false, it does not get added in. So for example, if I return false for all of them, all right, we'll be left with an empty array. So if I go searched, I'll show you guys what I mean. If I refresh, there'll be nothing here. All right, it's just an empty array. All right, what happens if I return true? What do you guys think will happen? Any guesses?
Return everything.
It return everything, right? Because we're not filtering at all. We're just saying everything is valid. There you go. All right, so there's a thousand pieces of data here. All right. So what we need to do is we need to check, right, the first and last name. So let's do this. All right, const name equals. Now this is gonna be the individual user. Let's call it u. Now this is going to be u.name.first. I think is the format that we have. Let's have a look. Yep. So name. So user.name.first at first and last, and then also u.name.last. So this is the name. Now, what do I want to do? We're just going to do a simple comparison here. I'm going to return name dot includes q. So what this is going to do is it's going to search this combination of the first and last name, and it's going to see if the query, the thing that we've typed into our autocomplete, is a substring of name. For example, right, let's say the name is Bob Brown. If I pass in BO, right, we want that to return Bob Brown. If I type BBRO, right, that's not going to return. If I type Bob space B, right, we should lowercase this, so it should work. Right, to lowercase, and we'll also do the same for Q. So it's case insensitive. So now whether we send capitals or lowercase, it should work. Right, so I can actually do Bob like this, and that should work. Right, if I do Bob space B, that should also work. If I do Bob space C, right, that should not return anything. Does that make sense, team, on the logic of what we're doing? We've just joined these two properties together to create a first and last name string. We've lowercased it. And then we're also lowercasing the query. All right, so now all of this, it's the reason why, is so it becomes case insensitive. So all of this becomes lowercased. So now we can compare. We could also do to uppercase. Either way, doesn't matter. Does that make sense, team, on what we're doing? I'm gonna add a little comment in here. Okay. Add a little check. Yep, so that should be valid. Bob. Yeah. So say. Okay. All right. This should also work. Bob. All right, this will fail. So X. Oh. So if we do BO space, or if we do Bob C. Right? So that's what this includes. What the includes function does. Substring. Make sense, team? Okay. So why don't we try this? Let's actually run this in our API. Okay. So come over here. All right. Search 1, 2, 3. It doesn't exist. What if we just type in D? All right. So we've actually got some names that have the word letter B in it. All right. Oh, I suppose that's another thing we should mention, is you can actually type in somebody's middle name, right? So if we type in ROW, which is a substring of Bob Brown, right? ROW will also work. It doesn't have to start with it or end with it. It's just a substring. So what if we type in something a little bit more specific? Like, where are we? Roberto. I love that name. Do you know why I love that name? Because it always gets my sister. I say, what do you call an Italian man with a rubber toe? Roberto.
That's funny.
I love that. I love dad jokes. They're great. Okay. So I've actually, you can see here, there's actually only, oh, is that right? Yeah, that's right. There's only one person in our entire 1,000 users whose name is Roberto. I can't say it without an Italian accent now, I'm sorry. Roberto Moreno. At least they got his last name also Italian. It's good. Does he live in Italy? Does it have a location? No, he lives in Spain. Yeah, there you go. So our API is working, which is great. So that's kind of the first part done, really. Very simple. Without the comments, it's only about, I don't know, 20 lines of code. Pretty simple. Yeah, so I'm gonna add that in and say feature added search. Right, that's now on GitHub for you. So realistically, there's only one file that we've really worked with, that and the package JSON. So any questions on anything that we've covered so far before we go for a short break? Any questions?
Yeah, I have one question I posted in the chat as well. So I'm just a little confused why we destructure constant queue request.query.
Say that again.
Line 13, yeah.
Yep.
Why we have to destructure this one? Can't we just store it in a regular queue?
Oh, you can. So if you wanted to, you could do q equals .q.
Okay, yeah, that's, oh, yeah, makes sense.
I personally like this syntax a bit more. I find it a bit easier to read, personally, but that's up to you.
Tristan?
Yeah.
But then if we have multiple query parameters, then the structuring method is better, right? Because
Much
if you
better.
put it as a constant, it's going to grab everything, and then you have to filter it.
Yep. So if that's a great point. So if you have here .q, what do you have another, right? Like what if it's the size you want to return back, right? So whereas it's destructuring, just do it like this. Make sense? So I find and also renaming, right? So you want to rename it to something else. I mean, I suppose you could just come in here and call that query if you wanted to. Right? But I personally feel that destructuring is a much nicer approach to getting lots of variables. And it's the same thing with arrays, right? So you can do, let's say you have const array equals 1, 2, 3, like this. You can do the same thing, right? You can go const A, B, and C equals array. Now A equals 1, B equals 2, and C equals 3. And you can do even more fancy things, right? You can do a combination of array destructuring and object destructuring. So let's say this in here, right, is first, right, Bob, and last, right, Brown. Now in C, I can destructure inside here, right, first and last. So I've now got those variables, and I can also rename them, right? First name. Last is last name. So this is a combination of array destructuring and object destructuring. It's very, very powerful stuff. So that's just a little trick on that. If it doesn't make sense, don't worry. You don't need to know it. It's not necessary for today's tutorial. So going to keep it simple.
Yeah, you can check the link posted as well on the channel.
There's some great resources.
Yeah, documentation online if you want to get into it and really see the details.
Mm-hmm. All right, team, get up and have a stretch. Go and get a glass of water, stretch your legs. Let's come back at 20 past, so it's 10 minutes or 11 minutes for those who are very precise. So we'll come back at 20 past. Work for you guys? Okay. Excellent.
Sounds good.
I'll be back in a second. Just going to get some water. Sorry about that. Can you guys still hear me? My computer jumped out for a second. So how's everyone's week been? If anyone's still around?
Yeah, I am. My name's Kim.
Yeah, what, sorry?
Kim.
Kim?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The week has been a little bit. It's okay.
It's okay.
Yeah, I'm still doing the job that I'm doing right now, but it might be take a little time to learn like web development and then start a new career for me.
Yeah. What are you currently doing?
I'm an auditor, like an IT audit, so maybe more on like security side.
Right.
Yeah. But I think coding, like web development.
And you're looking to jump into development?
Yeah.
It's exciting.
Yeah, it is exciting, but it's really.
Yeah, a lot of people.
Mm-hmm. And I think I have to invest quite a bit of time this year just to learn a new skill before actually like I'm looking for a position. Yeah.
You know, there's a lot of people who are in a very similar position to you, Kim, who are actually now getting jobs. So we've helped a lot of people get jobs, which is really cool. So I think one of the big things when you're starting out is just having a bit of guidance and other people around you to, I think, hold your hand through some of the process, because there's just so much out there, and it can be very confusing if you don't know exactly where to go as a beginner or somebody starting out. And there's just so much. You talk to any developer, and they all have a different opinion on what you should be doing and what you should be learning, and they're all biased on the skills that they do for their job, and it can be a little bit overwhelming if you're just starting out, because you're like, do I learn C++ or do I learn Python or do I learn JavaScript or?
Yeah, that's very true.
So
and a lot of the time, like after they got hired, and then they have to learn a new language skill.
Right. They still have, yes. So that's really common with people in university, right? Is they go to these they pay exorbitant amounts of money to go to these 4-year university degrees, and then they don't even use that stuff in their job.
Yeah. So I just graduated last year. I'm running business, and then right now at work, I'm doing a little bit like Python coding, like use a simple model and SQL, and none of it I learned from the university. And my concern right now is whether I could go back to the university just to take a second degree in like engineering, like or I just take like my boot camp or just self-learning.
I think so. I think if you have the aptitude for it and you have the drive, you can teach yourself anything you want to learn. So I was also at university, right? I started engineering. I was doing business management and IT straight out of high school. And I realized that I could learn all this stuff for free. I was learning on the job. So I got a job straight out of high school working in an engineering firm, which I was fired from, by the way. I was terrible. I had no idea what I was doing. But, during that job, I realized, hey, this stuff that I'm doing in the job, I'm learning. And actually, they're paying me to learn.
Yeah.
Which is pretty cool. I like this. And then on the other side, right, I was going to university, and I was paying to learn. And it was out of date. And it wasn't ever going to be used. And I thought, something doesn't add up here. Now, this is not true necessarily for every single university degree. I'm not saying that all engineering degrees are BS, because there's some really good ones out there. But for where I was in Australia at the time, you don't to be a web developer, you don't need a degree. Put it that way. If you want to be an engineer and start getting into some of the real deep stuff, a degree might help.
Well, if you want to get into more research type of work,
academic stuff,
that's where your university degree is useful. But the thing is, you have to really, really be passionate about research, because like Tristan said, you're going to have to pay for that learning. You have to pay for your degree. You're going to pay all those years. You're going to be paying to get the ticket to get that career, which is kind of, it would say you really want to be getting into research. But if you want to just be a web developer, if, you know, you can just learn yourself and learn with a community and learn on the job.
Yeah. Yeah, that's, I suppose, the benefit of what we're doing is when I first started learning and teaching myself, I had no one. I had a couple of people at work who I would bother all the time. And I just keep going up to their desk and saying, hey, like, what do I do here? Like, I don't get this. And eventually I just picked it up. But, you know, getting that first job, you know, that can be hard. I was lucky because I somehow, my IT teacher at school who taught me programming, the beginnings of programming, he had a friend in the industry and he just basically referred me. I was very, very, very lucky to, at the age of 17, get my first web development job. But not everybody has that same luck or that same, you know, that same network or experience level. So getting the first job is the hardest one. Once you got your first one, it's smooth sailing. That's because true. You do a good job, right? You make sure you get a referral, a good one, and once you've got the first one, you can get the second one. Once you got the second one, you're done, right? You can easily get another job easily. You just need to stay relevant, right? Show that you're constantly learning and growing, and there's a whole bunch of other things that we talk about with regards to that in terms of how you present yourself in interviews and whatnot. But yeah, I'd say really sticking with the community and helping, like we can help you take those steps and guide you towards where you want to go as a developer. And that goes for anyone, not just Kim. No, not everyone has the same journey, do they? Everyone has their own ambitions and their own. For some people, they really want to get into AI. They want to take that machine learning, data science path. Some people, they really want to do the design path, right? Maybe Andrea on that side. Some people, it's very much just front end. I don't want to do back end.
I think
some people it's full stack.
That's probably another benefit of the degree as well. Like if you are doing a degree, like you get that exposure to everything, and it makes you very flexible. I think in your career, you're very flexible about if you want to change to different areas. You have some background, but yeah, the downside is you have to spend 4 years, and depending what country you're in. I mean, if you're in the States, I wouldn't recommend it at all because of the price of a degree. But if you're in somewhere like, if you're in Europe, for example, where degrees are relatively cheap, I think in Germany they even have some German citizens even get free degrees. Then, and you're like 18, 19, and yeah, sure, why not? There is ways where a degree there's pros and cons to everything. It just depends on your life personally, where you're at. And you just see what is the best options for you.
Yeah, definitely.
Switching a career is a big decision because I'm currently still working. Like I'm having a good job, and all my friends say it's really perfect. And why suddenly you want to switch to a new career, like different path? So.
Yeah, I think this is a whole another discussion that I'm quite passionate about. But I think there really is a space to be a generalist. Our entire life and society kind of focuses on specialization. But life doesn't work that way. There's very few things in life where you can look at it from just one perspective. And I think there is a space for what I would call a deep generalist. Somebody who understands deeply a few things, but is able to translate that information to many different areas. For example, right, learning how to design will greatly improve your development, and learning how to develop will greatly improve your design. I'm talking about graphics design here, right, in terms of web development. So cross skills, I think really help as well. So
yeah, I find you have to
be flexible.
You have to be adaptable, right? Like you have to. If you sit down and you say, okay, I'm going to be a React developer, that's it. I'm going to just only take an opportunity that's for a React developer. Well, then you're kind of putting yourself and you're being a bit rigid. Whereas in your city, there might be more opportunities in some other technology, or you join a company as a React developer, and the work as a React developer for that company starts to become less important, but there's different work that is more important. You kind of have to be flexible to move around.
Yeah.
If you just classify yourself as one thing, it makes it very hard whenever the world changes. You kind of need to be able to be flexible.
But of course, technology never changes, does it?
No, it stays the same. I think
it's always the same.
I think React they were using React in the 1920s. So it hasn't changed.
Yeah, they built that to build the original computer, right?
React.
And of course, we're always going to use React in the future, aren't we? We're never going to learn a new framework. Of course, I'm joking, team.
We're going to just learn one thing, and then we hope the whole world stays the same.
Yeah, it doesn't work like that. We don't get that opportunity. It used to be, in some respects, like back in the 80s, you could learn a technology and you could use that technology for your entire career. These days, nope. You don't get that option. All right, so let's get back into it.
Get back to.
Of course, of course. That's what we're here for. That's what this community is here for. All right, so get back into it. So Sandy, you were having some issues with the code. Is that all resolved now? I think you might have missed a little bit of a bracket or something when you copy and pasted it.
No, some of the brackets went awry when it copied and pasted, so now I have to go back and look at all of them. So.
Oh, where are you pasting it into?
Oh, I'm just using Notepad, so I open it.
Don't use Notepad.
It's Notepad++.
Yeah. Okay. That could work. I would recommend a better editor like VS Code or something like that. It just has better support for what we're doing today. And yeah, if you're using Notepad, it might format things very strangely. So just be aware of that.
Okay. Thanks.
VS Code is free, by the way. It doesn't cost anything. So. Okay. Great. So any questions before we jump into the next part? Anything you guys need help with? Cool. Oh, it's a little message. Yep, that's the link to the code. All right. So why don't we go ahead and start with the front end. So we'll probably do this for an hour. I have to jump onto another call at about 1 o'clock. So we'll make this a two-part series, as we discussed earlier. So let's think about how we're going to do this. Probably use Babel, or maybe create React app. That might work. A lot of people here are pretty familiar with that. It's been a long time since I used create React app. I think I don't usually use it. So let's just have a look at how they recommend. Might not need a tool chain. Yeah. Why don't we try this from scratch? So I'm going to go ahead and create what we call a source folder, right? Because what we're going to be building, we're going to be typing in a different language to standard JavaScript. So that it actually needs to be transpiled from JSX, right? So JavaScript X, which is for XHTML, and then that's going to get transpiled into the dist folder, right? So the first file I'm going to create is the index.html. All right. Just call this autocomplete. Right. Don't worry about HTML structure, it doesn't matter too much. I'm going to create a app ID app. Right, this is where our React is going to get injected into. Right. Then I'm going to create a index.jsx. Right. Now we need to add React, don't we? So yarn add React. Okay, so that's added that in as a dependency for us. So we're going to go import React from React. We also want to install another library called React DOM. Now wait to get the exact syntax of this. Is it render? It might be render. Okay, just takes two options. Right, the first one is the HTML element. So we're going to go document.get element by ID. I'm going to use the ID that we created here. So this app. App. And then the second thing that we have is the actual component itself. So in our case, we're going to have a very, very simple React app. It's just going to be one component. So in our case, let's just call this autocomplete. This. Okay. And that should hopefully be it. Now, obviously, we need to have our autocomplete file, autocomplete.jsx. And I'm going to use a functional component style as opposed to a class. Const autocomplete. I might move this aside just so you guys can see that previous file that I was working on. Autocomplete equals return span hello. Okay, so let's try and get this running and compiling together. Okay. I'm pretty sure we just create a little Webpack file for us. Webpack.config.js. Of course, we need to install Webpack. So yarn add Webpack. So as you're starting to see, right, we have to borrow a lot of books for this project to work. So we can get hairy.
Interesting. Just a
modules.
Question for you. So, do you have to keep running yarn start to update to add your updates if you're changing the?
So that's just for the API. Now there are more advanced things that we can do with this, such as Nodemon, which will actually watch the file system for you and restart the server.
Oh, sweet. Actually, I think that's what Bali was saying. Bali was mentioning Nodemon.
Yeah. So you guys can definitely set that up if you want. I just chose to keep it simple.
Right. Yeah, so that's just for the API, you said. Okay.
Okay. So Webpack.
Christian, I have one question.
Yeah.
So, like, we are not using here create React app. That's why we are doing all this, right? In the front end.
That's correct.
And what is Webpack?
So I was just about to explain. So great question. So Webpack is, I think they have an image on their website that explains it best.
Yeah, I have opened that on site. Webpack.
This here explains what Webpack does. So it essentially takes all these different resources, right? Whether it's SAS files, right? Different templated files, PNGs, images, JavaScript, TypeScript, all this stuff, and it compiles it together and generates some static assets that the browser knows how to read. It bundles everything together. When we write our code, we want to have lots of different files. But when we run our code, we want to have a couple of files. Make sense?
Yep.
So that's what Webpack does. Now, in our case, the browser does not know how to read JSX. So what we have to do is transpile JSX into standard JavaScript. So that's what we're going to do today. So I'm pretty sure, let's just have a look on their documentation. They might have a very simple example of JSX Webpack example. Webpack in itself as a topic is a huge, huge topic that you could literally spend weeks on. I'm going to keep it very simple. I'm just going to try and find something somebody else has done so I don't have to worry about this. Yeah, cool. So the way Webpack works, right, is depending on what files that you're importing, right, so you create different rules for each of the files. So you say, when we import a JavaScript file, do this. When we import a PNG or an image, do this. When we import a SAS file, do this. So that's what these rules are. Right? You tell Webpack for this type of file, whether it's a JS or a JSX, right? We're going to use a thing called a Babel loader. Now, a loader is essentially a job or a task, something to do. Right? Imagine it like a name call. Like the teacher yells out your name, right? And you say, "Here, miss." Right? So that's kind of how this works. Right? As you have to do something when your name is called. Maybe you stand up, maybe you do a dance, whatever. That's how Webpack works. And then you might pass that on to another loader. You can actually chain these loaders together. For example, anytime you import a SAS file, you want to convert from SAS to CSS, right? And then the second thing that you might do is you might pass that CSS onto, say, the style loader, and that will inject it on the page, right? So that's an example of chaining together these Webpack loaders. In our case today, we're going to keep it very, very, very simple, and we're just going to have the Babel loader. We might do SAS next week, but for now, let's just keep it simple. So I'm going to copy and paste this code. I'm just going to paste this where I'm looking. So for the transpilation from JSX to JavaScript, we're going to use Babel. Babel is essentially that. It's a way of. You can also use Babel for other things. For example, if you want to write ES Next or ES 2020, new versions of JavaScript, and you want to transpile it back to the old versions of JavaScript for old browsers, that's what you can do with Babel. So I'm going to actually copy and paste all this stuff here. If you're using npm, you can use this command. I'm going to copy and paste this stuff into yarn. That's going to yarn, add, and then all of these. So Babel core, Babel loader, Babel preset, and React. So that's going to allow us to transpile Babel. Any questions on anything I just covered so far with React? React and Babel and Webpack and why it's needed? If you're using something like Create React app, it does all of this for you behind the scenes. But you guys as developers should know how to set this up for yourself. No job or production environment is going to be using Create React app. I can tell you that. I don't think I've ever seen a company using it in real life. It's more for like when you're starting out, right? But you should know how to do this yourself. Okay, so the second thing we're going to do is we should install all those dependencies for Babel. Right? Let's go ahead and create the Babel file. It's a small configuration to tell Babel, and call it Babel RC, .babelrc, Paste that in there. So this tells Babel to use certain presets, so it knows how to compile it, transpile it. Okay. And then I'm just going to copy this Webpack config. Now this Webpack Babel loader, this will automatically read in this file here. That's why we have those. That's how they get connected. So it knows how to read that in. Okay. So the rules that we've got here is it's saying for any JavaScript or JSX file, excluding anything inside the node modules, use this loader, right? Convert it from JavaScript, so from JSX into JavaScript. So that's what this does. That's what this rule here, this rule does. So if we go back to our Webpack image, right, it's grabbing one of these, it's creating this and converting it into this. Make sense, team? Any questions on this or anything we've covered so far? Great. So we should probably create a build script. And again, I'm going to push all this onto GitHub pretty soon, so you guys have this. All right. Now, what we want to do is Webpack, I think it's CLI. All right. Let's just check what he's got on his Webpack mode production. Let's try that. -- mode production. All right, so production build. So it removes things like comments and logging statements and all that sort of stuff. You don't want that in your production code. All right. So let's try it. Yarn build. See what happens. All right, so it's saying we have to install the CLI. All right, so this is going to do it for us automatically. I'll say yes. All right, so I've added that in. Let's try it again. Okay, so who knows how to resolve this? What does this mean? What's this error? Anybody tell me?
Do you need to install dependencies?
No, we just did that.
Check your arguments for that command.
No. Nope.
We don't have entry point?
That's correct. We do not have an entry point. So Webpack is asking us to say, hey, I need to actually have a file to load all the dependencies. All right, so you see in this one of these examples, this is probably not the best image for it, but we need something to load as the first thing. And that first entry point file will load all of the other dependencies as a chain. So in this case, we want it to be, typically you want it to be the index file. All right, so in here, we're going to have the entry. Let me just go index.jsx. Source. Okay. Let's try this. Cannot resolve. Might have to be an absolute path. So let's go const path, just require path.resolve. See if that fixes it. All right, seems to be doing something now. There we go. So you can see that it's created this dist folder with all this stuff inside of it. All right, what is all this? Anybody know what this is?
Minified code.
Yeah, but why is there so much of it? Right, if you look at our file, it's very small. This is all we've got.
The imports.
All the translations for it to be able to convert the code.
Yeah, translations, there'd be some stuff for translations in here, but this much? What is all this? It's React. All of this stuff you see here is React. So you guys can see, you have to be very careful with what you choose to include in your library, in your app, because this all gets downloaded by the client, all of it. So you'll often hear engineers talking about the bundle size, right? Webpack even tells you 128 kilobytes. So there's quite a lot in here. All right, this is all React. So that the browser knows how to render it. This is all React code. Right? So now we have a system where in Webpack, we can import this file, the entry point file, index.jsx, and we created a rule where it says for any of those files that end with JavaScript, JS or JSX, which this file is, run this task. And this task also uses the Babel config here to tell us how to convert it over. It's like a translator. If you Babel RC as like a Google Translate for your code, it's probably a good frame for it. Okay. Any questions on anything we've covered so far? I'm about to push this code up, but before I do, I want to have one more thing. But any questions on anything around Webpack or Babel or JSX or this dist folder that's been generated, which we should also add to git ignore. Don't add that to git. Any questions on this? And how we set this up? Cool. So again, I'm gonna post this up for you guys in a second. Before I do, I'm going to install a plugin for Webpack. This is a very, very common plugin. You'll see in the dist folder, there currently is no HTML. So we're going to install a library called HTML Webpack plugin. Yarn add HTML Webpack plugin. Now what this will allow us to do is it's a special Webpack plugin inside Webpack that grabs all the resources that are required for the application to run. For example, the main JavaScript file, and it creates a HTML file with all those dependencies added for us automatically. So for example, Sass file, like CSS files, JavaScript files, font files, there's all these different configurations we can have for it. Right? In our case, we're going to use the template that we created here, this index.html. This is going to be our template, and it's going to automatically create a HTML file for us here with the script tag with the main.js automatically added. So that's what that plugin is going to do for us. So how do we set this up? Well, in our Webpack config, I'm going to import it. So const HTML plugin equals require, and that plugin we just installed, which was HTML Webpack plugin, like this. Okay. For some reason I can't save my code, which is very annoying. Now, this is not going to live inside the module. It's going to exist inside the plugins. And plugins is an array inside Webpack. I'm going to go new HTML plugin. Now you can actually do it just like this, and that will work, and that will automatically pull in any JavaScript files. All right, let's see what this looks like if we run this. Again, this is very annoying. I don't know why I can't save my file. So if I run yarn build, all right, now watch the dist folder. It should now generate an index.html file for us. Let's see what it comes back with. Okay, see here? So it's all minified. Let's beautify this file. Now look, right? We didn't come up with this file. This automatically happened. And see how it's automatically created this script file? Script tag that links to this file. It's pretty cool, right? That's automatic. But what's the problem with this, team? What's the problem with this file that it's generated for us automatically?
You'd have to build
compared
it,
to,
wouldn't you?
we have to what, sorry?
You'd have to build it each time if you're going to change it.
Yeah. Yes. Compared to what we've got here.
We don't have our div tag.
Yeah, we don't have the entry point for React, do we? So how do we fix this? Well, thankfully, right, this library allows us to use a template as opposed to automatically generating this for us. So in here, we have the option, and we can use template like this. Right? And we're just going to go path.resolve, right? src index.html, like that. So it will use our HTML file as the template, which will contain, when we build this again, it will contain that app ID. Let's have a look. All right, beautify this. And there we go. So you can see it's got this, but it's also added the script tag in for us automatically. And that should be it. So if we go into this file and we load this file up in our browser, right click, copy path. We go in here. Right. We might have some errors. Autocomplete is not defined. All right, so now we're getting there. So let's go into here. Now I think this is complaining because it's saying this autocomplete doesn't exist. It's not defined. So we'll import that. Import, right, autocomplete from there. Now if we rebuild this, hopefully we should see something that says hello. And if that works, then our React pipeline and everything was successful. So it's saying it cannot resolve autocomplete. All right, how do we fix this? For those who are good at Webpack, does anybody know how to fix this problem? All right. So what we actually have to do is tell Webpack that we can import, like this, in this syntax, we can actually import JSX files. Because normally it just looks for JavaScript and a few other things. But we need to tell it to resolve JSX. So I believe that's under module. But let me just check what this guy has. Resolve. No. Doesn't seem to be an issue here. Webpack resolve JSX. Right. So this little part here, resolve extensions. So it tells Webpack that we can resolve the JSX extension. Okay. So let's go ahead and add that into our Webpack config, like this. I don't think we need that empty one. So let's try it again. Hopefully, it'll work for us. There we go. Go back to our page. Refresh. Hopefully, fingers crossed. No. Got some other errors. I've never seen this one before. React minified error 200. See what this comes back with. We do have the right render, don't we? Document.get element by ID. Just see if that's working. Yeah, so that should be there. App. I wonder why. React DOM.render. Was it the other way around, perhaps? Let's try that. Let's try flipping these around. That's probably what it is. If that fixes it, I'll push this on GitHub. Nope. Still getting some strange errors. Sorry, team. Usually this is pretty straightforward. All right, well, to debug this, why don't we set up a little dev server? Okay. So yarn dev. And for this, we're going to use Webpack dev server. Okay. I don't know if that's automatically installed. Let's just see. Yarn dev. Now we'll have to install that. Yarn add Webpack dev server. As you can see, Webpack can get pretty complicated pretty quickly with all these different translations and various things.
Tristan, why the companies don't use a Create React app?
Because it's too simple.
Okay.
And often they'll need custom things, and you'll need to handle different stuff. And the lack of it's really great for spinning up a project, but if you want to get in there and customize stuff, very difficult.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's running on localhost. Where are we? 8080. All right, so let's see what this error is telling us. Element type is invalid. Not quite sure what is going on with this. Ah, we didn't export it. That's why. Sorry, team. Usually I use TypeScript, so it throws these errors. And then export const. Yeah, that should hopefully fix. And then if we import React on here, import React from React, you need that on every page, anything that uses JSX. And there we go. Okay, so sorry about that, team. So just to recap what I fixed there, right? This wasn't exporting anything, so I had to export. I had to add the export command in there. So I do apologize. That was just a little brain spasm on my side. And then I also added this Webpack dev server so we can run it locally and start spinning it up and doing things like hot reloads should work. So I type in hello, type goodbye, save that. Without refreshing the page, it will automatically do that for us. Okay, so I'm going to add this all onto Git for you. So just to recap, right, we added the Babel preset. So Babel is like your Google Translate of code, translate from JSX to JavaScript. You remove the dist. So we've added this dist folder now. That's where everything lives. We've removed that from GitHub, from Git. We added a couple of different commands and packages. You guys can read through that if you want. We added a very basic Webpack config with setting up the rule, JSX, making sure that we resolve the extensions. The Webpack doesn't know to automatically import the JSX files. We grouped everything together with the HTML plugin. We set the template for the HTML plugin to what we're doing. We remembered to add the export to our little component here. This is just standard HTML, nothing fancy. With the entry point of React. I might just comment that, entry point to React. And then we added the basic React entry point. Remember, this is the entry point for Webpack. So you have to include all your dependencies here. So any questions on anything we just covered so far today?
Is there any other security handshakes that should be done when you're going back and forth?
Security handshakes? You mean like a secret thing where we like slap each other's hands and call each other Brown or Brown?
Well, just if you have like logins or things like that, like you're making sure that somebody has access and other people don't, or anything like that, or?
So you mean for our API?
Yes.
No. So currently, what we're going to be doing is just exposing a public API, so anyone can come through and search this, like Google, right? You don't have to be authenticated to search Google. If we wanted to, we could add some authentication to it, but that is definitely out of scope for what we're doing today. I would highly recommend going through some of the YouTube videos that we have on, say, the chat app has a lot of authentication stuff. We've got a lot of other ones with JWTs and various things. So, if we want, we can do a recap of that another week, and how we do authentication. But I think for today, we'll keep that keep public. If that's right. Does that answer your question? If that's what you meant?
Yes, thanks.
Cool. All right, so you guys are probably eager to see this code, so I'm going to push this up for you. Feature added React. Okay. So that's all on GitHub for you. Great. So we've got about half an hour left today, and we're going to continue this next week, as I mentioned. So why don't we get started with some of the basics of this component? So I'm curious, team, how would you guys break this problem down from a front end perspective? What would you guys do? What do we know about this component? What kind of HTML elements are we going to use? All right, what do we need to be aware of? What are some things? You guys tell me.
In the chat, where it says input.
Yep, so we'll probably use an input field. That makes sense.
Yeah, I think same from Balu, like a form, yep. A way of getting
form.
User input.
I don't know if I'd use a form for this. And the reason why I wouldn't use a form is because we might want to have this input field or this autocomplete field inside another form. So if we add a form to our component, it means we can't use it in other forms, which is probably not very ideal. So I would definitely not use a form for this. I would use the input field, but I'd not use a form. What else? well, we need to fetch something, right? Get the data. So we'd probably use something like Axios, which we've already got installed, right? We'd use what would be used for on Google. What would we use for this drop down that we see here? What do you guys think?
Things that you've already searched before, or highlight or something.
Highlight. So we don't currently have highlighting. That's quite a fancy part of our search, right? I'd probably use like a list item, like an unordered list for this. Keeping in mind, we've got to have these hover states, right, so that we can move up and down, right? So there's actually quite a lot of moving pieces to this component. You can see that every time I move over this thing, it actually replaces what's here, right? But it doesn't trigger a refresh or a new fetching of the data. Just grabs these results, and if I click out of it, right, it's got that result there. We've got an X button to clear it. Right, there's quite a lot of things going on here. Obviously, we're not going to touch the voice, because that's a very complicated system. Yeah, so why don't we go ahead and actually start building this out, right? See how far we can get in the next 25 minutes. So we know that we need an input field. So let's go ahead and add that. Now, I'm probably going to wrap all of this in a div, right, just to keep it simple. So we know we're going to have an input field. We're also going to have the results, don't we? So we're going to have we might make that a UL. Inside here, we're going to have the drop down. So maybe results dot map. All right, so with the result, we might have the UI. Right, we're just fleshing out what we want this to look like. I know we don't have this stuff yet, so we might have like the r.firstname or name.first, and it's r.name.last. Right. So this doesn't currently exist yet. This stuff. So what's the first thing you want to do? How would you guys approach this? Maybe the first thing we do is maybe have a onChange, right, for this, and e.target.value should be text value. Right, and we want to do something with this. We want to search this, don't we? So maybe we have a search function, const search. Maybe it takes a string. It takes the query. And then maybe it does, maybe this isn't asynchronous. Now, why do we import our Axios that we had before? The same thing.
Tristan, I wasn't sure how the results actually came back. Does it come back as a list of, or
yeah,
you have it as JSON, isn't it?
Yep. So it comes back as a big list of JSON. That's correct.
So you'd have to still put it into like a list.
No, it is automatically in the list.
Okay.
It's automatically, so JSON can be a list. So this is valid JSON, right, as a list. So if you have a look at our API, we're returning searched. Within searched is an array. So this will be an array. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thanks.
Cool. So let's do this. Let's try this. Let's say const response equals Axios. All right, we have our HTTP localhost. What are we doing? 8080. We might have to change that because that's the Webpack is running on that. So let's change this to 9999. Just choose whatever, something random. Pick a card, any card. Then it was /search, then a query string. All right. So we'll pass this in Q equals Q. Now again, we're going to do our await like we do in our server. Let's just log this out, log response. Now we need to pass this in to our search. So we'll just do a search like this. And that should be it, really. So what have we done here? All right, forget about this results stuff for now. I'll just comment that out. So we've got an input field, and on change, right, we want to run this function, search, which takes a string of the value of whatever we've just changed it to. And then it runs this function, which is an API call out to our API that we created. It passes the Q as the query parameter and logs out the result. So let's try this. Let's see what if this actually works. Bring this guy in. Right. So I have no idea what that is. Generator runtime is not defined. I've never even seen that error before. So I'll try restarting this server, see if it fixes it. Generator runtime is not defined. It's a fancy sounding error, isn't it? Must be a Babel problem. Babel polyfill is required. Okay. So we need to install a dependency. So I just went yarn add Babel polyfill, see if that fixes our problem. Hopefully. Okay, come back over here. Nope, still getting the same error. What does that mean? Stage 0, perhaps? Come down to our Babel presets, stage 0. So I think we need to install that. Babel preset stage 0. This is one of the common issues that a lot of people have with the JavaScript and web development environment is there's just so many things to configure. Other languages are a lot simpler. So it's one of those you love it or you hate it kind of things. Plugin preset files are not allowed to export objects. Okay. Do not understand. Maybe try this one instead. Sorry, team, this is a little bit confusing. I usually use TypeScript, so I don't get these issues. I'll upload this code in a second for you, so you can skip these errors. If this works, I'll push it up. Let's just see. Just remove that stage 0 for now. Nope. Okay, so Webpack is being very annoying right now. Try this instead. See if this. I think it changes across versions. So I think sometimes it can cause some problems. It's different answers on Stack Overflow refer to different versions of Babel or Webpack or its plugins. All right, looks good there. And it looks good here. So sorry about that, team. There was just a bunch of things I had to mess around with on that one. Just simplified for us. I think we can remove this one, and this one, and this one. I think it was just that one dependency that needed to be installed. Just try it. And if that all works, yep, it does. Great. So now if I type something like Bob, we have to run our API as well. So I'll create that in a separate tab. Now start. Refresh. I'll just go BOB. Okay, so we've got a cause issue. Anybody know what that is? How to fix it?
Yeah, you need to enable cores on the backend.
Mm-hmm. What is cause? What's the cause of this cause problem?
Yeah, so client and server are in different domain.
They're on a different port. So we need to basically say, hey, Mr. Express or Mr. App, we can expect other people to come and talk to us. Don't be antisocial. Don't only accept requests from yourself. Right? So if we go and include cause like this, and we do app.use cause. Like that. Very simple. That hopefully should, oh no, I've got sort of yarn, add cause. Okay, and then if I type something, great, it's working. I'm gonna zoom in here so you guys can see. So if I type something generic like B, there is 168 people who have the letter B in their name. If I type BO, there's 15 people who have BO. If I type BOB, there's one person who's male, right? Bobby. Bobby Hughes, Mr. Bobby Hughes. Right, so that's working. It's currently, this is good. This works really well. What if we type a different name like Susan? S-U-S-A, no, S-U-S. Who's the S-U-S? Another male. name, Jesus Banks. There you go. Jesus owns a bank. Funny that. What else? What's another name? Shane. Got any Shanes? Nope. Got a female called Shannon. Right. So it's currently working, which is pretty cool. Right. Any questions on how we've got this to work? Right. I'm gonna add this into Git for you guys, but before I do, I just want to do one last thing. But any questions on how this input field is searching our API?
So Tristan, it's going to look at the server to get the information, but you're dumping that information into the console right now.
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So what we're going to do next, right, is we're going to actually list the users out. Okay. So let's do that. I'm going to use a hook called useState. We're going to call this results. Initially, it's going to be set to nothing. Set to null. Right. Now here, right, we're going to have, let's say, results is true, and right, so only show the results if there is results. And we're going to map over the results and display this. So this should work now. This should be correct. Because remember, we've got these users in here, right? So all of this should work. The only thing we have to do is set them. So set results to response.data. That's it. That's all we need to do, I believe. So I've just created this little hook. When we call set results, it renders the entire component again. But this time it's rendering it with the results because we've set it. And it re-renders the entire result with the results. And now because the results exist, it loops over them and it will display those names of what we filtered. So let's see if it works. All right, we've got an arrow of this.
Missing an arrow in the.
Missing an arrow. Whereabouts?
Where you have results, you have return, and then skip down to results, return data. And then you have results. On that line, there's an end arrow, but I don't see a beginning arrow.
End arrow.
At the end of the first results, end in UL.
Oh, this here?
Okay, so it starts at UL. Okay.
Yeah. So we've got the UL. This here is saying if the results exist, because remember it's set to null by default. If the results exists, then do this. And then inside here, we're looping over each one. And then displaying the name like this. But somewhere, this is throwing an error for us. Just retry this. I'll be sure what that error is. Nope. Use state is not defined. Okay, so let's import that. Use state. Okay, so now if we type B, right, these are all the people that have a little bit B in their name, every single one. Right. So if you type in P, A, B, there you go. Right. What's another name? Right. Jacob. G. Say again?
Try Shannon again.
Shannon. All right, what about last names? All right, her last name is Moreno. M-O-R-E. Right, and you see it's targeted Leo, because Leo also has that in his name. And there you go, team. That's the basics of what we're going to do today. Next week, we're going to focus on selecting this with a keyboard drop-down, clicking on them, setting the actual value of the input field, various things like that, styling it, doing a bit of styling. But yeah, that's kind of today's lesson.
So what was the one dependency that was needed?
Great question. I have no idea. It was, I think, something to do with transform runtime. I have no idea what that is. You guys can Google that. But I'm going to push all that on GitHub for you guys. I just had to add a plugin for Babel. I think it has something to do with knowing how to transpile the async await, because that's relatively new to JavaScript, relatively in the past like couple of years. So some browsers don't know how to do it. That's why Babel transforms it. So I think that's what it was. And then the other one was the cause. That was a new dependency that we added as well. So let me just do this as two separate commits. Stage this. For those who are part of our talk on Thursday about Git, you can actually do partial stages of files. Right, so I just staged that one part. You can see here there's another change here. I just staged that one part, which is really cool. Which allows me to split up my commit. So now I'm going to go feature, added cause, or enabled cause. Then this other one will be fix. Right, fix Babel. And the last one is list or queried feature list users on autocomplete. And there you go, team. That's a wrap for today. We'll see you all next week on part 2 of this tutorial, where we're going to look into styling it and doing some of the arrow drop downs, some of the user experience things, some other considerations for what would make this a good component. Things like the ability to pass down props. If you wanted to post this on NPM, for example, for other people to use as a library, what would you include? Various things like that.